Welcome to the broadcast, my fruits. Another day at Royal Ascot, another fascinator. Today we have yellow. It looks ridiculous, I know. I know that I look like an Easter egg that's been left off the shelf too long. But I'm dressing for fun this week. In particular, fun rather than grand style. And I swore I'd never wear a fascinator. And some of you asked me where I've been finding them for a few looks this week. Well, they're actually from one of the charity shops that I frequent. I think it was the British Heart Foundation. They come new off the rack, brand new. I think £8 or £11, something like that. So would I wear them in real life? No, not on your Nelly, but they're fun for dressing up, and the money goes to charity. So it's a bit of fun, isn't it, my dear? I think I've worn these for you already. Now, if I'd known that the Princess of Wales was going to be wearing red today at Ascot, I would have found something to pair with this and to wear royal red. But it was too late. I'd gone with yellow. And I feel like I've got an egg yolk cracking over me at the moment. But I feel that I can wear it if I can find a story in my mind. And the story is blue sky, white clouds, and a yellow sun in the sky. Do you see? A story brings it all together. So that's what I'm serving for you today, my dears. Take it or leave it. But I don't blame you if you leave it. I probably would. But Catherine stole the show, didn't she? Stole the show today, riding on in a carriage with her gorgeous husband at her side. And in the carriage with them was Princess Beatrice and Edo. And wow, the headlines went crazy as soon as she appeared. And apparently the paddock crackled with energy, crackled at this diva in our midst. Yes, no longer a mere duchess, but a Princess of Wales, nevertheless a queen in waiting. And we see the diva. Yes, I love seeing this side of the diva emerge, just ever so subtly, but it's there in bold colours, a bold statement. A queen of style arrives, and a queen of this United Kingdom is on the way. The red gown is by McQueen, and I have to say I'm not one for these kind of cardinal or poppy reds in June. I would normally reserve that for July, to be quite honest with you. But we'll make an exception because the sun is in Cancer, which is my birthday month, so I will let her off. But she was giving us diva. She looked absolutely glorious, so bold, so queenly. This lady in red means business. She's not here to play, my dears, not here to play. I absolutely adored everything about it, except for the earrings. She's worn those Cézanne earrings before a few times. I loathe them. I'm sorry. It looks like something one would pick up from some market stall in old Ibiza town. Not for me. But she still looked wonderful. And in the first carriage, their Majesties arrived to great applause with the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire. Sophie travelled in on the third carriage with the Earl of Caledon and the Michaels. I love seeing them out and about. And the reason I call them the Michaels, some have asked, because they are Prince Michael of Kent, Princess Michael of Kent. Well, I like to differentiate between them and the Duke and Duchess of Kent, which is a different twosome entirely. You have the Duke and Duchess and the Prince and Princess. And so for the Prince and Princess, I tend to call them the Michaels. I also find it extremely camp that she's called Princess Michael. You know, I understand why. I understand that she takes her husband, you know, it's the same as Meghan would be Princess Henry of Wales. The same sort of affair, but it does tickle me that such a masculine name goes with a feminine creature such as Marie Christine. But yes, wonderful to see them. And also Dame Judi Dench made a cameo in the fourth carriage. She's getting in everywhere, isn't she, my dear? With her partner, I think, and Mr. and Mrs. William Farish. A happy occasion today, but not a patch on the joy, the unbridled joy of yesterday for Ladies' Day, where their Majesties were overcome with emotion in the royal box because their horse, Desert Hero, won the King George V Stakes at 18-1 odds, 18-1. And of course, Desert Hero was bred by the late Queen Elizabeth. So it was an absolute shocker. It stunned the king. His eyes seemed to fill with tears, as did the Queen's, and she was helped as tears were wiped away. And there was high emotion and so many familiar expressions. The king looked like his late mother, and Queen Camilla's blue eyes flashed a brilliant azure to match her Van Cleef & Arpels bangle. Princess Anne's broad smile evoked a flash of her late mother. Yes, she was her mother's daughter in that moment. The king was so giddy he knocked over the trophy. But at least they managed to have a chuckle about that. And Zara said that it was a bittersweet moment, and their minds were on how proud and excited their grandmother would have been. Queen Camilla wore Anna Valentine on Ladies' Day and the day before, which was better than the Dior number that she was first placed in on the first appearance there, in my opinion. She was in green, pale green chiffon with a feathered hat by Philip Tracy, and the look came together for me. I really liked it. And one of Queen Elizabeth's diamond brooches was worn, a rectangular lozenge, which I thought was absolutely stunning. Zara Tindall was cool and lacy, with yellow flowers to the hair and grey baubles to the ear. Princess Anne was in a deep green jacquard number by Sue Palmer, and Prince Harry's nemesis, who he just can't bear and keeps slating, Sir Clive Alderton, was very welcome there as the King's private secretary and the late Queen's private secretary. The Duchess of Edinburgh was in a nice gown, head to toe in pansies by Susanna, and she wore blue gems, and there were pansies featured on the hat too. So for me it created a much more harmonious story than the previous setup where the gown and the hat weren't matching. There was a story there, and it was lovely, and it was a really emotional story because she was accompanied by her father, who is 92 years old, Christopher Rhys-Jones. Very affectionate photographs taken there, and there was an outpouring of affection for Lady Susan Hussey, who was seen with that beaming smile of hers, could never put a foot wrong, gossiping with their majesties, probably congratulating them, looking absolutely lovely in blue. And on Wednesday, in case you didn't see it, Queen Camilla wore pastel pink and a very light shade of tan for the hat, which reads almost a pale lemon, sort of like a fondant fancy pink and lemon, but I think it was a light tan really. And she wore much of that outfit to the Sussex wedding, so it's getting a recycle here for Ascot. She wore 5-strand pearls with pink topaz, a gorgeous big stone there with earrings to match. Loving the pink topaz, Camilla, and I rather liked the whole outfit. On that occasion, Sophie wore white with a large bow detail. See how a hat with matching tones brings that story together. Snatched. Hats bring confidence to an outfit. This is their chief function. They can have a dramatic impact on the attitude and the confidence of the object. And that is why I did moan and wasn't backwards in coming forwards complaining about Sophie not matching her hats to her gown sometimes. There's no reason for it. Says River in yolk, egg, yellow and blue. Well, as I said, I'm going for a rather novelty look today. Should we put it that way? Novelty. But I don't care what you wear, my dear, but let me understand the story. And I didn't understand that story that Sophie was reading to us the other day, but I understand today's, and I understand this one from the other day, whenever it was, because it was white with white, it was crisp. It could have even been a crisper white on the hat, actually, if she wanted to get the attention to detail a bit better. Catherine is very good at this. Then again, perhaps that's what endears us to Sophie, because her style is a bit more louche. So, horses for courses, literally. Zara had opted for blue and green on that particular day, with a hat that appeared to undulate emerald. I loved the Princess Royal in this blue and white. It gave me hints of 1950s diner, you know, with the milk bar and those sort of retro fridge vibes. I don't know what I'm on. I thought it was a retro vibe, but then the headlines emerged and it was retro, but not 1950s, 1970s. She made her first appearance in this dress 45 years ago. 1978 she wore it, and then it was seen again in 2021 with the window pane check. It's so cute, isn't it? She wears it extremely well, and hey, she has the same figure and can wriggle into the same dresses as she did 45 years ago, which is quite an achievement, isn't it? The handsome Prince Michael of Kent continued to be propped up by two gorgeous women, one being Princess Michael of Kent and the other this jolly filly in florals. The menage-a-trois continues. The twinkle is still very much in his eye, with two twinkling ladies at his side. They're all enjoying each other deliciously, aren't they, in this menage-a-trois, having lots of royal fun at the palace. Why not? In those beautiful twinkly twilighty years of winter, especially when they're all looking as handsome and pretty as spring. They've still got spring-like twinkles in their eye over winter, and they're enjoying it by the cosy fires. He is very dapper, And if you're wondering if I would, yes, I would. And no, I don't have a fondness for the older gentleman, especially. But yes, I would. I would let him have his way. With Princess Michael's permission, you understand. The trademark application for the exclusive rights to the word archetypes. Rejected. Rejected by the US Patent and Trademark Office, who said that the likelihood of confusion with the existing Arizonian company or brand of Archetypes LLC, and this existing brand from Arizona sought exclusive use in 2015. So you were too late, Harkles, my dear, for a series of books and articles on nutrition, fitness, self-improvement, this kind of thing. Well, undeterred, Meghan's lawyer has applied for another 3 months in which to finesse the affairs of the claim or the request, the Archetypes application. So it ain't over, but so far, another rejection. Also, they failed to sign the application, which was a real oversight on behalf of their lawyers, isn't it? Couldn't they have at least worked out that they need to put their pen to paper on this occasion and not reel off some affair from the household secretary like they did to the bike shop? No, this requires a real signature. And she made the same mistake when she was applying to reactivate the TIG, which we are all waiting on tenter hooks, aren't we, to see the emergence of the TIG. Happy birthday to Prince William, 41, and having fun. I loved the candid rehearsal photo we saw that was posted on behalf of the King. Yes, this rehearsal peak from the coronation, having a giggle. They have a nice relationship, don't they? ITV have also commissioned a new Windrush documentary. There's been a ton of celebrations for Windrush Day this week that the King's had a lot of involvement with. Windrush Day, 75 years since immigrants arrived on the Windrush from the Caribbean in 1948. Somebody that was celebrating Windrush Day was Trevor Phillips, the former chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, who is also a writer and businessman. And as part of his interview on race relations and Windrush, he spoke about the negative impact of Meghan and Harry. Yes, he did. He said, most people would agree that we are not a racist society. We are the most welcoming country in Europe and most of the world. They could have been a beacon of discovery and reconciliation, not just to Britain, but the whole world. Instead, they completely squandered an opportunity to show everyone what this country is really like in matters of race. A country where nobody disturbs themselves about a marriage across the lines of race and ethnicity. But they constructed this completely ridiculous and unpleasant story about how maltreated they were, which frankly no one believes. No one cared about Meghan's race. They could have made things different for millions of people and they chose not to. That's unforgivable. In my book, that's a sin. Whew, very harsh words there from Trevor Phillips. The Duchess of Sussex's popularity has plummeted to an all-time low. An all-time low, so says a YouGov poll. Yes, in wake of the car chase, the car catastrophe waiting to happen, when Herbie went bananas, or Henry went bananas. Fallen. Her rating has fallen. That star's fallen out of the sky to minus 47. How do they come up with these numbers, I ask you? Well, apparently it was 2,000 people who were polled in the beginning of June. 68% hold negative view, 21% hold positive. Ooh. Well, that's quite a large ratio, but fallen. Her star has fallen. Harry isn't faring too much better either. Tom Bower has been up to his tricks again, hasn't he? According to him, a rebrand is being discussed in the Markle household, and we are to see the emergence of Spencer, the new house of Spencer of Montecito, on the cards. They want to revive the Spencer bloodline and rebrand as Meghan Spencer and husband. Meghan Spencer and hubby. Yes. Harry Spencer, Meghan Spencer, Archie Spencer, Lilibet Spencer, Lilibet Diana Spencer. Actually, we could just discard the first name and she can become Diana Spencer. And Andy Cohen has been discussing Meghan too. He's got a new book out, The Daddy Diaries. And he speaks about the time when he was interviewed for Archetypes on her podcast. Now, he had some very good things to say about her. He appears to like Meghan, and he was very fair, and he said that it was absolute rot, all this rubbish about her not conducting the interviews herself, according to him. She did all of his interviews, she was informed, she was well researched, he said, and thoughtful. So she didn't just dial it all in via the producer. We have to accept that. But he seems to have picked up on her shady side, or a side that he said was interesting, because when she interviews him during the podcast, she has a narrative of her own, weaving its way through the interview. And this narrative she gives questions whether or not the show that Andy produces, this Andy Cohen, whether it creates caricatures of women. Well, he says that she failed to put it to him directly. She had the chance to ask him. That's what the podcast was for. That's what he clocked in for, to have a chat. And he's not afraid to answer her questions about this caricature. He said in that narration she talks about what a tough conversation this was for her. I think it was interesting that she said it in the narration but didn't discuss it with me head on. Wouldn't that have made for a more dynamic conversation? Yes, Andy Cohen, it would. And it points to the same thing that we all said, didn't we, during the podcast, which is that it seems to be a vehicle to have all the arrows pointing right back at her. She's not really asking them something without an agenda of her own, a point that she wants to make. She doesn't seem interested in their points unless they reflect what she wants to spin. So you are not the only one that found that interesting, Mr. Cohen. Also a wasted opportunity, because that would have actually been a little bit more interesting, wouldn't it, to hear you challenged and then to hear her challenged with your reply. Perhaps it's because she can only exist in some kind of echo chamber. She doesn't like any dissenting voices. To her it's not even worthy questioning, and it's why she didn't go down very well at the palace. And it's why all of her guests on that podcast were of the same kind of ilk, which is a bit of a waste, isn't it? Because you want a bit of friction, something to banter with and go back and forth on and bounce on. You can enjoy debate with true diversity, which is a diversity of opinion and thought, can't you? Why do you have to limit yourself to people that seem to go along so very easily and readily with opinions that you already hold firm? Well, one thing we might be able to credit her husband with is doing just that, because it appears that he wanted to bandy around some ideas for his podcast, which might still be coming up on another platform. He apparently wanted to interview Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump and Mark Zuckerberg about their upbringing and their traumas. Childhood traumas was what he wanted his podcast to be about. This is what we've been told by Bloomberg. And it was said that multiple producers and production houses were approached by Harry to get this out there. There was even talk about having Pope Francis in to talk about religion, societal conversations about climate change, and he also had an idea for a show centered on fatherhood. Well, sounds very noble, sounds extremely boring. If this is what he's going to continue to spin, childhood trauma, not sure how much he's going to manage to spin out of that without putting his father's name in his mouth. That's the key, isn't it? That's the key to their success. And perhaps that's why he's chosen the subject of childhood trauma, because it will mean that he'll have an excuse to talk about his family. And I'm talking individuals, and name them into the future. We shall see. What stuns me is how much time, money, expense and energy goes into the research stage for these concepts, for this podcast, which never actually happened. How difficult does it really need to be to pull a show together? As we've said before, one podcast that I've been watching on YouTube, and I'm not a podcast watcher, I'm an avid YouTuber, but not so much into the podcasts. I went through a phase of watching trigonometry. I think that's a very, very good one. I've also quite enjoyed lately The Diary of a CEO, you know, that chap Stephen Bartlett, depending on the guest. Many of them I pass by, but last week I found myself binging. He was interviewing Edward Enninful. That was quite an interesting one, about his growing up in Ghana and his life as a fashion editor. Nicola Kilner of Deciem, I watched her story. Remember her co-founder from Deciem, Brandon Truax, went crazy and topped himself, didn't he? And there was one with the American businesswoman Barbara Corcoran. I'm just holding that up as an example of a very simple concept, just two people at either end of a table with a microphone each, and not much in the way of production. I shouldn't think they have 28 to 30 people working on it, maybe 3 or 4, but no frills. You know, when the substance is there, you don't need all the frills. But if you find yourself, as Prince Harry does, brainstorming as if he's about to host Lion King the musical, as if he's putting on some Broadway review, and they're going to need lights, camera, action, a cast of thousands, a troupe of dancers, nonsense on stilts, juggling balls all over the place, and laying down high budgets, then he really should be asking himself, is what I've got to say so very dull and uninteresting that it needs all these kind of adornments? Well, yes, Harry, my dear, the answer is yes. And that is a resoundingly similar answer to what your wife got at the end of her run of podcasts. Because, everyone tuned in to see the initial calamity by episode 12 or 13. Tumbleweed. Thank you for dropping in to see me for this polka dot frivolity. I appreciate your company, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Leave me a comment, tell me what you thought of the outfits. I always find your views interesting there. And my tip jar is in the description box. Have a nice weekend, and I'll pop in and see you soon. Take care, my dears, and toodle pip.